All right, so hopefully you can see behind me, we've got our winter bug out location set up. I've got my CVT rooftop tent with the NX room. So this is my setup for a vehicle-borne bug out. This is all the normal gear that you guys see in my vehicle. I've got a table, chair, and then I've got that little propane heater that on the low setting will last about 3.5, 4 hours or so. And I have 10 bottles of propane with me upstairs. So I can come up the ladder, and then you guys have seen this before, but then in the upper level, I have my sleeping area. In this scenario, we're really kind of setting up a semi-permanent location here based on the assumption that we're not able to get much further at this time because of weather conditions, running out of fuel, and or the desire to take advantage of resources in this area. So this is basically set up now for us to operate out of for a couple of weeks if we need to. Now, between the two of us, we have a full food supply for about 10 to 12 days, and if we conserved it, we could easily live off of that food supply for a month or so. However, we are in an area where there's quite a bit of game. So I'm going to take a little loop around for two reasons. One, I want to look at some of the country around. As it gets dark, I'll be able to see if there's any lights off in the distance or anything. We're a long ways out in the middle of nowhere, so we're not anticipating having any issues with other people out here, but it's always a good idea to look around. So here we've got some really fresh rabbit tracks in the snow. Yeah, here's a good concentration of tracks here. I can see a couple of possibilities of good places to set up snares in here. But the rabbit in here has kind of been wandering all over this area. And you can see they're traveling in between these down junipers here. Alright, well I made a pretty good loop. The area is definitely secure. And I did see lots of tracks, lots of rabbit tracks, and even a few sets of deer tracks. So I'm feeling even more confident now that we have plenty of food resources in this area. I'm getting back to camp. And we'll go see what Primal Archer setup looks like. So he's went with the wheel and lean, and this will kind of be our community cooking camping area. So we're storing in the firewood and everything right here. And then we brought along a couple of dogs in case we run really low on food supply. There's probably 40, 50 pounds of meat on one of them and maybe 30 pounds on the other. So if we really start starving, we've got a supplemental food supply with us.
And if we just take one leg at a time off of them, we can preserve the meat longer by leaving the animal alive.
And that also is a big benefit because they basically carry themselves. Yes. It's a food supply that continues to be.
They can get along on 3 legs just fine.
Yeah. Alright, well we just had a hot dinner and we're just going to kick it around the fire and probably tell stories and try to figure out how to make our YouTube channels bigger.
But it's cold, I tell you what, it is cold.
Well, we woke up to a little snow this morning. I could hear the wind for a while picking up, and so now it looks like we've got a storm coming in. From the mock bug out scenario, it wouldn't really matter, we're just socked in here. But from the scenario of Primal Outdoors has to be back to work tomorrow, we got to pay attention and make sure we don't get snowed in out here. Jason, how was the night in the wheel and lean?
Well, My sleep system was great and I was plenty warm. But as you can see, we got a little snow. The wind decided it was going to blow directly at me. So I had to get up in the night and do a little adjusting. I had to drop the lean a little bit, move some of my gear back. But, you know, all in all, it's pretty good.
So as far as the test of my vehicle Borne Bugout kit, I've learned a couple of things on this trip. One is that there actually is a pretty significant amount of effort that goes into setting this all up. I do feel pretty confident that it would make a solid 4-season, semi-permanent kind of shelter off of my vehicle. One thing that I'm going to change about my system is, as I was going through my food supply, I realized that most of it is kind of pre-prepared food. It's either Mountain House meals or MREs, and then supplemented with some cans of food, some sardines, some things like that. But what I did realize is, when I'm thinking about the concept of a vehicle Borne Bugout, there's no reason why I couldn't also have some things stored in my vehicle, like 15 pounds of rice or something like that. There are ample opportunities out here to procure protein sources. So we're near deer winter range. There's a lot of rabbits, a lot of robins through here, a lot of animals that provide protein, but not a lot of sources of carbohydrates. So I think having some staples like some rice or maybe even some flour or a mixture of flour, some type of like a bannock mix or something like that, would actually be a good addition to my vehicle Borne Bugout system. Something else that I decided on this trip is that I narrowed my choice of firearms to 3: my AR-15, my 10/22, and my defensive handgun. However, there's no reason why I couldn't go ahead and add a 4th or a 5th firearm to my vehicle Borne Bugout system. Now, if I had to leave my vehicle on foot, I would need to make a choice at that point. But as far as operating out of my vehicle, there's really no reason I couldn't add 2 more firearms. Outside of those things, everything worked pretty well for me on this trip. The shelter worked out well. I used the propane heaters as a heat source in these buildings. Obviously, this time of year being very cold, having some kind of a heat source occasionally would be nice. So I have 10 cylinders in there. I may add a few more cylinders just based on the idea that in the vehicle borne situation, that is supplemental heat sources to get me through maybe some really severe times or some extreme scenarios like that. When it comes to the vehicle Borne Bugout, I have a lot more choices in the gear that I bring. So there's really no reason not to bring larger pieces of gear or more gear that may be consumable. So in the event of some type of a bug out scenario where I was leaving civilization for a relatively long period of time, if I'm leaving in my vehicle, I might as well take more rather than less. All in all, good trip, good learning experience, and now the snow's piling up. At this point, we're in kind of a race against the storm. We were kind of struggling to get in here with the amount of snow that's here, and it's been piling up even more, so we really need to get moving and start heading out of here. So, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll hit you back on the next one.